was quite the social coward. Past is painful, present's painful. Stepdad leaves, takes 90% of the income with him. I go from ski trips and Xbox, Christmas presents, all this stuff, to now I get free lunch at school because our income's so low. And I look at my future and I go, okay, there's no trust fund, there's no dad. We are screwed unless I do something.
Lazaros is a performance coach, speaker, and entrepreneur. He co-founded Next Level University, a global top-rated podcast.
How would you build someone back up after breaking it down like that?
That's leadership in a nutshell, by the way, because building people up, I think, is easy, and I tend to do that. That's my natural. I love to build people up. So I have these 3 circles. So picture a target, 3 circles. The outer circle is what you want others to believe you are. That's the fake it till you make it. Then the next layer is...
Welcome, Alan.
First of all, gratitude first. Thank you both for having me. I'm honored. I started listening to podcasts 9 years ago, and they really helped me sort of reorient my life in a more positive direction. So I'm just very grateful. It's a dream come true. And I don't take having anyone else's attention lightly, because really whatever you give your attention definitely dictates sort of what you do and don't do and the trajectory of your life. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You have a pretty incredible story, but we only dabbled the surface. So we would love to start by just hearing about your story and kind of what made you who you are today and all the struggles that came with it.
Yeah, so the first thing to understand is that I didn't understand any of this at the time. I'm going to be 36 in November. I'm hoping to hit puberty at 36 is usually the joke that I make.
Good goal. Great goal.
So I'm going to try to condense 35 years into 5 minutes. So that's going to be really quite tough. But ultimately, didn't understand any of this at the time. Started doing therapy in my 30s, sort of started rewatching the movie of my own life later on. And now I kind of get it. It's like when you watch a movie as a kid and then you see it again and you're like, oh, got it. The movie didn't change, but you changed and now you understand more. So hindsight's 2020. So I was 2 years old. Father passed away in a car accident when he was 28 years old. Had a mom who was 31, stay-at-home mom, sister who was 6 at the time, and my real last name is actually McCorkle. So John McCorkle was my father. He was a part of a big Irish Catholic family. So Lazarus is my stepfather's last name, and Lazarus is a very Greek last name. So anyone who's Greek comes to me and goes, Lazarus? Let's see, blonde hair, blue eyes.
Not seeing it.
Yeah, you don't have a hair on you. What are we doing here, right?
Show us the 23andMe results, right?
And so I say, listen, it's not my last name, blah, blah, blah. So my real last name is McCorkle. Big Irish Catholic family. So Irish, Scottish, German. It was Jim, Joe, John, Jane, Joan, Jeanette. 6 kids, and he was one of 6. And so when we became the Lazaruses, my stepdad came into the picture from age 3 to 14. And we were the Lazaruses. And when we were trying to be the Lazaruses, we kind of stopped associating with the McCorkles, just unconsciously. And I playfully refer to the 3 to 14 as boats and BS. That was the part of my life that was boats and BS. My mom and stepdad didn't get along very well, and they loved to party. And that's the polite way to put it, ultimately. But this was late 90s, early 2000s, dot-com bubble. Stepdad worked for a company called AGFA that did hospital computers, so we did very well. We were upper middle class, New England, America, dot-com bubble. And so ultimately, and again, I didn't understand this at the time, but it was boats, and it was ski trips, and it was my stepfather built the home. We lived on a lake. We had a yacht. We had snowmobiles and motorcycle. My mom drove a BMW, that kind of thing. And I got early Christmas presents, Xbox, Dreamcast, all that kind of stuff. And then when my stepdad left at 14, he took 90% of the income with him. He also took his entire extended family with him. Haven't seen or talked to a single one of them since. I did speak to him on Facebook Messenger, but I've never seen him since. And that same year, didn't understand this at the time, but 14 was the hardest year of my life. Same year, sister moves out with her older boyfriend. Same year, my mom gets in a fight with my Aunt Sandy, her sister, and my aunt ostracizes us from her side of the family. So kind of by the time I'm 14 years old, I didn't learn this till my 30s. I kind of lost 3 families by the time I'm 14. Now, in hindsight, it's obvious what happened. So the 4 trauma responses are fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Fawn is the one I didn't know about until my 30s, and I did that one big time. That's basically appease. I was quite the social coward, sort of this engineering, math, weirdo, genius guy who just never spoke his truth, because the last thing a girl wants to hear when you say, hey, do I look fat in this? And you say yes at level 6 out of 10. That doesn't exactly work well. But ultimately, my trauma response was fawn socially, became quite the social coward, honestly. And I've only in my 30s really come out of that. But fight behind the scenes, it was, listen, past is painful, present's painful. Stepdad leaves, takes 90% of the income with him. I go from ski trips and Xbox, Christmas presents, all this stuff, to now I get free lunch at school because our income's so low. I'm shopping at thrift stores. My mom trades in her BMW for a little Honda Civic. We're not going to starve, but it's definitely like, whoa. And I look at my future and I go, okay, there's no trust fund. There's no dad. We are screwed unless I do something about it. And so this was my trauma response behind the scenes. Aim higher, work harder, get smarter. Aim higher, work harder, get smarter. I mean, to a drastic extent. I became this uber achiever. I hid it from everybody, but behind the scenes, so driven. So my two dreams, the big ones, I had several, but the big ones were going to be lawyer, politician, president, or it was going to be, and I realize now how weird that sounds, or it was going to be engineer, MBA, Fortune 50 CEO of a tech company like my hero at the time, Steve Jobs. I always used to argue who's smarter, Steve Jobs or Bill Gates. Blah, blah, blah. So anyways, I chose obviously the engineering road. I got straight A's through all of high school. I got the President's Award. It's actually behind me right there, signed by George W. Bush, which is basically 95 or above GPA for all report cards, all 4 years of high school. And we were broke. So I went from like, I can't wait to go to college. I want to go to WPI. It's one of the best engineering schools in the world, Worcester Polytechnic Institute. It's kind of like a mini MIT in Massachusetts. To it's 50 grand a year. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to go when my stepdad left. So luckily I crushed it in high school. The obnoxious kid at the award ceremony who went up over and over and over again for every math and science award there was. And I got tons of financial aid and scholarships, academic based. And I went, and it was 50 grand a year back then. So, I mean, thank you so much, US, for investing in me, right? Got my computer engineering degree, got my master's in business, and then I was off to the races, tech companies. So you guys have careers in, Netflix and Disney and all that kind of stuff. So I did the tech company road, and I went iRobot, Sensata Technologies, Lens Americas, Oz Development, company that was called Tyco Safety Products, Simplex Grinnell now, and eventually landed at a company called Cognex. And I did product management, I did product engineering, I did a bunch of different things. I eventually did inside sales engineering for a company called Cognex, got promoted to outside sales engineering, and my territory was Vermont, Western Massachusetts, and Connecticut for a company called Cognex. My customers were big manufacturing facilities, mostly in Connecticut, but Vermont and Western Mass as well. And they did machine vision equipment. So imagine this camera with bottles going down a line, 100 per minute or whatever it is. And it would make sure quality assurance that the cap was on right and everything was good, and manufacturing. And so fast forward, I'm in my early 20s. I pay off 84 grand worth of college debt in a single year after getting my master's. I have $150,000 in a Vanguard account, invested in mostly tech companies, S&P 500 as well, some different index funds. And ultimately, I didn't know this at the time, but when I went broke, when my stepdad left, I think my mind went, okay, wealth is the answer. Like, if I get wealthy, all our problems will be better. And I was a broke high school and college student. So I'm in my early 20s. I'm making almost 200 grand a year. And I don't have a mortgage. I don't have kids. My apartment is $500 rent. I split it with my girlfriend, Courtney. We live on a little lake in Worcester. I realize now how weird all this is, now that I've coached so many people all over the world. But ultimately I drive a 2004 Volkswagen Passat that I bought for $5 grand cash. I don't need much because I grew up with so little. And so let's just get really wealthy and let's invest. And then the tech companies I invested in did really well, because for me, as a computer engineer, it's kind of obvious what's going to win. I know that sounds really arrogant again, but whatever. So ultimately, then I get in my own car accident. This is for me when everything shifted. So super achiever, super successful, quote unquote, but deeply unfulfilled. Drinking too much and too often, not taking care of my health, working a ton, high school friends, college friends, corporate friends, spread thin, don't really know who I am, still kind of a social coward, didn't deal with my trauma from my past, but I'm super successful and very achievement oriented, and also very, very bright, very smart. Fast forward, I'm 26. I'm in New Hampshire with my little cousin. We're playing Call of Duty. 2015, bad winter up in New Hampshire. The snowbanks are covering the yield signs. I was supposed to yield. We were heading to TGI Fridays, not drinking or anything. And I was supposed to yield. I didn't. I end up on the wrong side of the road, and I look up in front of me and I saw what was the brightest lights I'd ever seen. And I thought it was a Mack truck. So two things saved my life. Number one, the Volkswagen Passat. Thank you so much, Volkswagen. I mean, this car, I used to call it the tank. German engineered steel trap of a car. Thank you, Volkswagen. The whole front end completely smashed in. This was not a fender bender, but the frame stayed. And if I was in some little Honda Civic, no chance I'd be here. So thank you for that, Volkswagen. Love that car. Number two, it was not a Mack truck. It's a lift-kitted pickup truck. And if it was a Mack truck, I also wouldn't be here. So physically, we're good. The airbag's deployed, little cousin. The only person who ever came back from my mom's side, his name's Jeff. He had a son named Dan, my second cousin Dan. Dan is the one who was with me in the car. Dan hurt his knee on the airbag. I hurt my face in the airbag. And he's tweeting about it already. High school invincibility complex, thinks nothing of it. I'm sitting there going, listen, I've seen pictures of my dad's car, and I've seen pictures of this car now at the scene of the accident, and it's like they don't look very different. So this is the second chance my dad never got, and this is my quarter life existential crisis. Phoenix burned down, rise anew from the ashes. I mean, after this, I just went all in on self-improvement, personal growth, personal development. I started my own company. And in hindsight, this is the last little piece here. I promised you 5 minutes, probably been 50 minutes, my bad. But ultimately, I now understand I was super successful, but deeply unfulfilled. And then I flipped the script. I was super fulfilled, happy, healthy, productive, fitness model, fitness competitor, fitness coach, holistic self-improvement, awesome, motivational speaker. But I went broke. Liquidated all my assets. I went all the way past zero, started my own company. Most people do that, by the way. Good luck, guys. I'm kidding. All right. And then fast forward, I eventually climbed out of that. And now I'm 9 years later, about to be 10 years later when I turned 36 in November. And now I'm both successful and fulfilled. And I think that's ultimately what most people want, which is I want my future to be an amplified version of my present. And I couldn't say that before. I couldn't see that until my 30s. I was kind of lost, honestly, in hindsight. And so I think most people go through that. They're either super fulfilled and unsuccessful, and they don't know how to scale and grow from there, or they're super successful and deeply unfulfilled, which I'm sure you two experienced to some extent.
Absolutely. I'm curious, just as you mentioned, finding that balance that you feel like you found, what caused that change? You know, I'm picturing on an axis here from when you went to basically broke to then finally getting to a place where there was both the financial as well as that fulfillment. Was it the fact that you pursued, ultimately that which led to more fulfillment? You had to hit that broke stage before you could then start earning the money to continue to do what you were doing?
Yeah, it's called the 227 rule in business. And again, I think it's a loose rule, but I remember when I heard it, I was like, not me, no chance, right? We're going to make money right out of the gate. And we did, but it costs money to make money, right? And the 227 rule states that most businesses, statistically speaking, take 2 years to go broke, 2 years to climb out of debt, and then 7 years to actually become profitable. And that's very depressing for a lot of people to hear. And I thought I'd be different. That's pretty much what happened. So we're coming up on $500,000 now, which is awesome, and gross revenue, not net revenue. And as a podcast, that's really good. As a business, that's really nothing. But it took a lot longer than I thought, for sure. And I do think we had to hit that sort of rock bottom for sure. Because ultimately, when you have the safety net, you use it. You inevitably use it. And I was pursuing fulfillment way more. It was character over everything and fulfillment over everything after that car accident. Because Kevin and I are business partners, and he had a similar sort of quarter life crisis, suicidal ideation in his 20s after hitting six figures. And so after that, we figured out that money wasn't the answer. And then we had to refigure out that money is totally part of the answer.
Right. That is actually fascinating when you think about that, because it is true. And I think, Art and I, we've faced those different things in our life too, where we joked and we called it, again, it was quarter life crisis, kind of as you guys, described, where it's like, especially as we got into careers where we were having success in those careers, but it's like, well, wait a minute though, what more is there? What else is there? And I think that's why a lot of people ultimately end up pursuing things like side hustles or start thinking about what's next, because they're trying to chase what that next thing might be. And we definitely, consumed so much of the, call it self-help type books and things like that as well. But I'm curious here too, as you mentioned the podcast side of it, because did the podcast come first and then you monetized that later and that became more of your overall business, or what did that look like from the beginning?
Yeah. So from the beginning, it was two fitness oriented people. We both were doing fitness competitions, kind of bodybuilder bros. And we thought for sure it was going to be guys that were listeners. It turned out to be mostly women. And that's shifting now, I think, as we become less cowardly. But ultimately, at the beginning, I had a podcast called Conversations Change Lives. And I had a little company called Lazaros LLC, what you'll never learn in school, but desperately need to know. And I was this sort of naive, big dream guy who thought that he could bring personal development to the school system. Little did I know that tagline was not good if you want speeches at schools. And so I had a podcast called Conversations Change Lives, and Kevin was my first guest. He had a podcast called the Hyperconscious Podcast. Change the way you think, change the way you act, change the way you live. Hyperconscious, if you look it up in the dictionary or in Google, it's acutely aware, to be acutely aware of yourself, aware of the world, aware of others. And so I was his first guest. And then we kind of partnered up and just started doing these episodes together. And we had the worst named podcast of all time, which was the Hyperconscious Podcast meets Conversations Change Lives podcast for like 20 episodes too. It was like 20 weeks where we did that. And then eventually it's like
help the audience learn, I guess, right? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. So we eventually went all in on Hyperconscious. And then we rebranded probably around 600, something like that, episodes. We rebranded to Next Level University, holistic self-improvement in your pocket from anywhere on the planet, completely free. But ultimately, I think underneath it all, it's become, he didn't meet his dad until he was 27. I lost my stepdad, lost my birth father to that car accident. And we both are two young men who both were raised by women, my older sister, my mom, and him and his mom and his Mima, his grandma. And we're from the same small town, small-minded town, and we have these big dreams. But ultimately, what is underpinning all of this is we are kind of becoming the male role models we never had. And that's really the cool part. And that's the purposeful, meaningful, fulfilling part. As for the monetization side, we started the podcast. He still had money from his career. He did weatherization. He made 6 figures. He did well, all things considered. And then I still had all my assets. So we just kind of lived off that for a while. And then eventually it got to the point where it's like, okay, we really got to start focusing on money. And then, so we started coaching. I started coaching fitness. He started coaching podcasters. And so now, 7 years later, I now have 30 people currently on my roster. And I did all the different kinds of fitness coaching and peak performance coaching and mindset coaching, and then like life coaching for a little while, and then eventually business consulting. Because I think an engineering mind in business is very powerful. And then ultimately business coaching is where I've landed. And I have 30 people on my roster right now that I coach weekly, biweekly, or monthly. And it's been hundreds, and dozens have come and gone, unfortunately. But ultimately, how do you grow, scale, monetize your business? And the podcast is, how do you turn your passion into purpose, into profit? So the passion is self-improvement. The purpose is helping others improve themselves and improve their lives and achieve their goals and dreams. The profit part is the hard part, because most people go right for profit. I mean, I did in corporate. I went right for whatever the money was so I could get out of debt and take care of my family, whatever. But the passion, purpose, profit road is way longer than you think. So most people go to profit first, go right to corporate. They go to wherever the money is. And I understand why. I did too. But then when you start from zero and you find your passion, self-improvement in my example, and then you turn that into purpose, the podcast is the vehicle to help people. How do you make that profitable? So we started coaching for free. We just found listeners, met listeners, started coaching them. It was, and then it was $50 a week, and then it was 75, and then it just grew from there. And now we produce podcasts. We have 3 parts of our business. I'll go brief about this. I don't want this to be all about my business. But Next Level University is about self-improvement, success, and fulfillment, pretty much. He has a podcast called Podcast Growth University that's about starting, growing, and scaling and monetizing podcasts. And then I'm creating Business Growth University, which is going to be about growing, scaling, and starting business. And so we call them listeners, longers, and business owners. So listeners are people who want to learn from us. Longers are people who want to build their own podcasts, their own communities. And then business owners are people who have skin in the game, who really want to build a real business, not brick and mortar, but like a real infrastructure, actual business, lead a team, all the delegation and all the nonsense that comes with all that. As you can see, it's been really fulfilling on that side. But ultimately, how do you turn your passion into purpose, into profit? And how do you do that in a way where you don't burn to the ground? And how do you do that in a way where it's aligned with who you really are? Because in the beginning, I thought, oh, everyone should be an entrepreneur. And now I definitely don't feel that way at all. As a matter of fact, I feel like most people shouldn't, depending on their demeanor and whether they crave any certainty whatsoever.
I'm curious, as you have these various individuals that, you are helping, or you have helped, is there a general like theme or barriers that you see come up repeatedly for people who are reaching out?
Absolutely. Yeah. So self-belief is the first one. And I want to make this as clear as possible too, because having done this for nearly 9 years now, coaching, training, podcasting, speaking, a little bit of writing, you kind of learn over time what was different about you. And that's the cool thing about coaching too, is all different countries, all different backgrounds, all different cultures, all different industries, all different goals, all different core values, all different dreams. So, but there's certain principles that are true for everybody. And so I've learned what was different about me through coaching so many different walks of life. I had three advantages, and this isn't to talk about me. This is to see if your listeners do or don't have these. And one of the problems too, and this is again going to sound like poor me, but that's not my point. I kind of only had three advantages in hindsight. I look like a silver spooner. Like I look, okay, white Caucasian male, fairly reasonably attractive, obviously intelligent, well-educated, like all this stuff. But the truth is I started from just one of the worst situations ever of all. Like, and again, not ever, but not great. So the three advantages that I had, because I've been wondering, I've been doing therapy in my 30s, and I've been asking my therapist, where do I fall on this whole ACE score thing, adverse childhood experiences? It's a big research study that basically says if you have a really adverse childhood, you're most likely statistically headed to some sort of early mortality. And you can research this. It's actually quite depressing to see. But ultimately, my ACE score is super high. I mean, super high. And now people look at me and they go like, how did that happen, right? If they find out my story, if they hear my story. And I figured it out. The three things that I had that I never, without these three, there's no chance I'd be here. Maybe not even here in life, never mind at this position I've been in. Number one is self-belief. I just believe in myself to a ridiculous extent. And people who have high self-belief don't know that they do, by the way. It's only Kevin who said, dude, it's not like that for everyone else. He's like, dude, I've witnessed you get laughed out of the building and then the next day show up as if nothing happened. And I had no idea that was weird, because that's just how I've gotten here, honestly. And he's like, dude, that would have crushed me for a week, right? So self-belief is number one. Anyone out there watching or listening, and this is very vulnerable for me to share, but I don't struggle with self-doubt very much. And I think most people know that by my tonality and that kind of thing. There's certain people in life who just don't really doubt themselves almost at all, even to a detriment. They end up very delusional, and I think most of them are not humble, and that I would say me in the past at times. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, and this is the really scary thing to share, you're not really allowed to say this, but I feel like we have to. I'm like really, really smart. And I always have been. Even as a kid, I remember thinking like, why are you guys all so dumb? And I realized they're not dumb. I'm really smart. Because when I was a kid, I used to think, why is everyone so lazy and why is everyone so unintelligent? No. You're really driven and really intelligent. Never realized that, right? And certainly the people in my environment didn't want me to know that. Okay, so you think these other people are a certain way when in reality, it's because that's what's unique about you. And you're not really allowed to say any of this typically because it sounds so arrogant, right? So I also figured out why I sound so arrogant. It's because if I have level 10 self-belief and only level 8 humility, I'm going to sound level 2 arrogant. I never worked on humility as much as because I didn't know I needed it, right? So humility is super important, by the way, especially if you believe in yourself, because that's the weakness. If you believe in yourself a lot, you'll end up reckless and arrogant. So be very careful. All right, the third one is I was born in a country that invested in smart people. Smart driven people. And so I got scholarships and financial aid to go to one of the best tech schools in the world. And I'm telling you what, there's no chance I'd be where I am without that. I mean, that got me out. That got me out of what I playfully refer to as the boulevard of broken dreams. And so I think it's important to understand that self-belief is where you have to start. Like if you don't have that, you do not have a chance. You just don't.
And when you mention that though, then for clients that you have, if somebody comes in and they're struggling with self-belief, what do you do? How do you approach that?
There's a formula. Now, I'm an engineer and there's 4 modalities of thinking. And for anyone out there who doesn't resonate with me, you definitely don't have math as your first one. I used to think I was a good communicator, and then I work with Kev, who's a really good communicator. And I realize now that I'm a good communicator to engineers.
Okay. Interesting.
So there's 4 modalities of thinking. One of them is mathematics, numbers, rationality, logic. And that's the rarest, I think, which is why I have basically hidden who I am for so many years. Number 2 is energy. That's also pretty rare. I think women tend to have that better than men, intuition and energy. And then the most common one is words and concepts. So most people think in conversations, words and concepts. And then the other one that's pretty common is pictures and images, vision. So if you don't have numbers first, I probably trigger you, and I am finally okay with that. Whereas my whole life, I kind of hid that part of me. And that's why I playfully joked about the girl. Like, do I look fat in this? Yes, at level 6 out of 10. It's like, you can't say that. So you basically just lock up your engineer. You have tiny self-worth, but tons of self-belief. And then you get bullied because everyone thinks you're arrogant.
Right.
Anyways, to answer your original question, there's a formula for self-belief. It's state, prove, self-assign. You guys probably do this unconsciously. You just don't even know it. Kevin was an all-star baseball player, my business partner. And he said, dude, I thought I got lucky. I said, what do you mean? He's like, I didn't want to be an all-star baseball player. I just played and I was just good. I said, wait a minute. You were an all-star baseball player and didn't intend on it? I was running a formula. I said, I'm going to get straight A's, and then I did it. And then I self-assigned it. So you can build self-belief. State, prove, self-assign. There was this website back in 2007. You guys might remember it. I was in college in 2008. And it was in my dorm room, 2008. It was a website called Stumble Upon. Stupidest thing ever, giant waste of time. It's like webcam roulette. You basically just show up in different webcam rooms with people doing gross stuff and funny stuff and whatever. I thought it was a huge waste of time. I thought it was stupid, but whatever. I think most people stumble upon things in life. As an engineer, I've never stumbled upon anything. I reverse engineer everything. So I decided I want to be a podcaster, and then I started a podcast and proved to myself and then self-assigned it. Most people are stumbling upon success, stumbling upon relationships, stumbling upon careers, stumbling upon working out or not working out, and then not self-assigning it. If you don't state that you're going to do something, then prove to yourself you can do it, and then self-assign it, you're not building unconscious belief. And people who don't believe in themselves don't know they don't, because most people are pretending they do.
Now, how would you say that dances with the term that sounds less intelligent, like a better way to put it, but fake it till you make it?
So fake it till you make it, I think, is inflated, ego-driven self-worth that works because most people think self-worth is self-belief. So I was a super high self-belief, low self-worth man.
Could you describe that a little bit more about the key difference?
Absolutely. So self-belief is self-belief is about, I can build it. I can build the castle. Give me enough time, enough resource. I can do this. I got this. I can achieve this. That's self-belief. Self-worth is I deserve to live in the castle. I am of value, and I'm going to honor and protect the castle by setting and honoring boundaries. Low self-worth is I'm going to let all my friends come in and spill beer on the carpets and treat me like crap. That was me to a detriment. I mean, I was a social coward, right? Because I didn't know how unlovable I was. And it's not till my 30s with therapy that I started realizing, got it. Tons of self-belief in an environment with a bunch of insecure people who actually have inflated self-worth. Why would someone with level 10 self-belief have level 2 goals? Everyone think of that guy in high school who made it seem like he believed in himself at level 10. Why doesn't he have any goals? If he believes in himself so much, right? Why doesn't he ever have any goals? It's all inflated self-worth. It's not real. It's not earned. It's not merited. Right? And so ultimately, self-worth and self-belief are formulas, and they can both be built. And I think that in movies, you guys are film buffs, the characters that we resonate with most are the guides, the ones who have high self-belief and high self-worth. Dumbledore's a great example, right? He earned it through merit. And when Harry Potter breaks the Elder Wand and throws it away, that's finally when he became enough. And Ron's like, no. That's the Elder Wand, because Ron still doesn't believe in himself. Right. He still isn't worthy. He's like, whoa, that's the Elder Wand. He's not good enough as he is yet. But Harry couldn't start the film when he's 11, break the Elder Wand and be like, I don't need this. You have to go on a journey, right? And that's the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell. You guys know all that. So I think that's why film resonates so much, because it's the same as our journey. We all just want to feel good about ourselves and be worthy and achieve our dreams. And none of us have been given the roadmap to actually do that.
I'm a huge sports buff. As you can see behind me, I'm a huge Kobe Bryant fan. A lot of things you talk about, I can say, that's Mamba mentality. I mean, it's kind of like hashtag that. When it comes to sports, it's easy to say, the greats, had this short-term memory. That's one of the reasons why they were so great, because no matter what failure or loss that happened to them, they bounce back, because it's like, I got self-belief. I don't care if I lost. I don't care if I missed that free throw. Next time I'm going to make it. It's 100% guaranteed. But they would miss again. It's easy to look at in the sports world and say, well, yeah, it's just a free throw. They're already so successful that they could take that chance and, who cares? When it comes into the business world, how would you coach somebody to say, look at your decision making in the same way as Kobe or MJ will look at a missed free throw? Like, don't worry about it. Come back and do it again because you're going to make it next time.
Yeah. Well, I think first and foremost, I try not to associate with anybody, although I have studied Kobe diligently, and the Mamba mentality I've studied diligently. And I try not to associate with anyone anymore because usually there's a pretty dark side to everyone's character that ends up being sort of the male role model I don't want to be associated with. Steve Jobs is a good example. It's like warning and an example. Warning and an example. So with Kobe, same deal. He's an example in work ethic and grit and self-belief. I mean, whoa, Mamba mentality, mindset. So I really appreciate it. The fact that you thought of him at all with me is a huge compliment to me in that regard, at least when it comes to drive and that kind of thing. In business, it is shot percentage is what you would track. So let's say you have 1,000 listeners and 100 of them are interested in group coaching and 10 of them are interested in one-on-one coaching. And of those 10, 3 of them work with you. So I've had hundreds of clients and I have 30 now, but I've lost more clients than I have now. And it's not to me. And again, this is to someone who has high self-belief. Some of them are ignited by failure. So there's 3 main fears that I've uncovered through my coaching. One of them is fear of failure. And most people who don't believe in themselves have a huge fear of failure. And especially being seen as a failure. Like other people witnessing them fail is like a big no-no. And if you're resonating with this, listener, any viewer, that means you have what's called defective at your core, which means you don't feel like smart enough or not good enough or not capable enough. That is not my core wound. For me, it's unlovable. That's the second one, which is pretty much you just aren't convinced you're a good person because you've been sort of bullied and or you had toxic parents. Like you just don't feel super lovable at your core. And most likely you believe in yourself a ton and kind of get shit on by insecure people. So you kind of get lashed out at, you don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. Everyone wants to tear you down. It's kind of alarming, honestly. Like if you're out there and you feel like you win at pretty much everything you set your mind to within reason, you tend to be better than other people at most things. And you really believe in yourself behind the scenes when no one's watching, you grind. And you can't really talk about it because it's arrogant to talk about, you most likely have what's called unlovable. Unlovable means Kevin and I would give the same speech and I'm certain I'm going to get you thinking differently. I'm certain I'm going to help you change your life. He doesn't think he's going to add any value at all. I think everyone's going to hate me. He is certain he's going to get everyone laughing and everyone's going to love him. So the only reason I know about this is because Kevin and I were the yin and the yang. Kevin is devastated when we get a negative review. I could give an F. I don't care at all. But when we lose a team member and that team member attacks my character, it devastates me. Kev's like, I don't care at all. Screw it. You can attack my character. I know I'm a good person. Got it. Okay, so the top 3 fears are fear of failure, fear of success, and fear of judgment. And they're based on core wounds, and you can study this: defective, unlovable, unwanted. And so Kobe was unlovable. And he had high self-worth too, especially in the tail end, but in the early days, definitely not. And ultimately, he doesn't care about being seen as a failure because he knows he's eventually going to win. And if you look at his trajectory and his mindset, he started from a very young age playing the long game. He didn't make a single layup for when he was 11 or whatever, coming back from Italy. Like I've studied this. And I also have a book. He's also an obsessive. And when I say an obsessive, the thing that's really frustrating to me, like a James Cameron, for example, he's an obsessive. People crap on him and people don't like him and he's mean and it's like, but you love his movies though. And unfortunately you can't have a Steve Jobs level product without the obsessive nature. You can't have Kobe Bryant level results without the obsession. And so I'm an obsessive. You can sense that. I mean, this is actually me dialing down, not up. Believe it or not. Most people think I'm dialing up right now. Most people think this is ego. This is actually less than what I really am. right? I'm actually scared and vulnerable to even be this much. Okay. So, and I didn't know that, but now I know that. So that's ultimately my answer is in business, you're never going to win every game. And you have to realize that even 20% success is actually normal. That's 1/5. If I can get 1/5 of it, I mean, there's what, 3 million podcasts? Like, if I can get one person to listen to my show over the other 3 million, that's a W. And I'm ignited by failure. I'm ignited by competition. I'm ignited by embarrassment. Kevin is not at all. He says, Alan, I need some wins, man. I need some W's. And so that's why if you resonate with the needing wins, entrepreneurship might not be for you. Or business partner with someone like Kobe, because you'll win no matter what, but you'll have a really hard time when he's not empathetic at all, when you're tired or sick or hungry or whatever.
Going that a little bit further though, because you say if you need the wins, it might not be right for you. But would you say that there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there who aren't doing it because they want to win in business? Like, what would you say is their driver? Or is it that they want to prove somebody wrong and that's what's driving them? But isn't that still a win?
I think Kobe was more driven by purpose than anything. Particularly, I think MJ was more driven by drive and competition, and he was definitely ignited by embarrassment and competition and those things. So they're similar, but Kobe was much more purpose. And in business, I think that some people are driven by relationships, and some people are driven by success. So I was sort of the type A super achiever. Tried to be. I love mastery. So getting good at stuff is my jam. So speaking right now, if you think I'm a strong speaker, I mean, that's thousands of hours of just perfecting my craft. I have a thing that I'm actually scared to share. I rate myself on 25 facets of effective communication. They're called the 25 impact points of effective communication: oratory, storytelling, tonality, volume, enunciation. Like, this is all by design. That's Kobe level obsessiveness. And the only reason I'm even allowed to talk about it is because he mentioned Kobe. Right? So I wouldn't even be talking about this. You wouldn't even know it. I'd do it behind the scenes, tell no one, and then show up really good, make everyone else insecure, and then be hated, not know why. And then that would drive me even more. So some business people are good at relationships, and business is about relationships. So Kevin is awesome at relationships. Everybody loves Kev. Not everybody loves Alan. Alan's necessary for success in business and systems and grit and work ethic and making sure we're aligned and the train tracks are set up for goals and dreams. And Alan doesn't care about experiences. He cares about results and process. Okay. Kevin is the likable one that draws people in. They tolerate me. Some people like me more, but very few. Only 4% of people achieve goals. I looked this up in January 1st, 2024. I was doing a meetup and I looked up the stats. The current stats are only 4% of human beings ever write and achieve goals. That tells me only 4% of humans actually believe in themselves. And if you're in that 4%, you most likely feel super unlovable because everyone needs what you want, what you have, and you don't know it. And they don't know it. And so if you are out there and you struggle with self-belief, you need to get around someone who believes in themselves and stay humble and learn from them and try really hard not to manipulate them. Try really hard to actually support them, because there's so few people in their life that actually want to see them win. They will be so grateful to be unconditionally loved. And if you can unconditionally love them and love them for their obsessive nature, I'm telling you, you are good to go. But if you are not humble, you're going to think you're like them. If you think you're like Kobe and Michael Jordan and you're not, you're in so much trouble. You're in so much trouble. The people who are actually like Kobe are afraid of it. They're afraid to even talk about it.
You know, I think with what you said too, it makes me wonder with some of these, call it business, partnerships too, because you just described those two types of individuals and even talk about you and your partner. So I think about Walt Disney and his brother, Roy Disney. You kind of described that. There were even Steve Jobs and Tim Cook for a period of, like when you look at their relationship, and then even in filmmaking.
Stephen Wozniak.
Wozniak. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think in filmmaking, I'm forgetting his name now, but James Cameron, he's producer. Is it Alan also? Anyway, there's that interesting balance that I think is often there. So anybody listen to this, like, great, how do I find my, partners, especially if there might only be 4% of them out there who are, the I don't know, the visionary tied to, that individual. But what would you say though, like, because for people who are like, Okay, yeah, 4%, and I'm not one of those. Like, Art and I have had that conversation. You obviously had talked about early on about how some of the stuff you started is like, how do you get people to talk about this earlier and educate people about it in school and that? Like, obviously there's a coaching later. Sometimes there might be therapy later, but what is it that gets people to really start making this common core that they like? What do they need to learn or review when they're younger so that they can think about the stuff sooner instead of having, I would even say quarter life crisis, but look, you even kind of admitted that for you, there was a quarter, but then later on, and this is the same for us, we then had another level of like, aha. And maybe you're going to have another one and we're all going to have them, in another 15 years too. But what would you say people should be doing if they don't want to just fall into that 4% statistic?
Therapy. So I often joke, I say, if what you wanted was what you needed, you'd already have it. Everyone who comes to me for coaching wants more success. What they actually need is self-awareness. Like, most people's goals are not aligned with who they really are. I had someone come to me, I kid you not. They said, well, I want to be the most successful production company in Canada, video production company. And I looked it up. This is how naive I was. This is in the early days. I looked it up and I was like, okay, British Columbia Pictures. Let's do it. And we created a system. I had him tracking metrics and habits, 30 habits a day. And he comes to me later on. He's like, dude, this is awful. And I said, yeah, but you said, and I showed him how much revenue. I said, and he's like, no. I didn't mean that. I said, oh, I'm very literal. I started going to my other clients. One of them, female, she said, I want to be a billionaire. And I asked her, I said, how many billionaires are there? Because I always look this up. I don't say I want to be a billionaire and then like go to the beach. You know what I mean? So she's like, I don't know, 10,000? Oh, 3,200. It's probably 33 now. How many of them don't have any generational wealth? She's like, I don't know, a couple thousand? Almost none. Okay, of them, how many of them are female and how many of them started with no investors? She's like, oh, I don't want to be a billionaire. No, you do not. No, you do not. And by the way, I'm helping you climb a mountain that is going to kill you. Not everyone should climb Mount Everest, right? And that's okay. Climb your own metaphorical mountain in advance. And to answer your original question, it's therapy. It's self-awareness. You think you want to go to Apple Store, you actually want to go to Microsoft. Like, it's being at a kiosk at a mall. You think you're here, you're actually here. You think you want to go to Microsoft, you actually want to go to Apple, or vice versa, whichever you prefer. And then the pathway, the elevator's out, the escalator's out. Now you got to walk the stairs, but you also have, a bad hip or something. The point is almost everyone is setting themselves up for failure. It's like a GPS or a self-driving car that doesn't have the right data of the terrain. A self-driving car needs an accurate current location. It needs an accurate destination location, and it needs accurate terrain. All of us remember the Garmin. It's like, oh, there's a lake there. That's not a parking lot. Whoops. Right? So in life, we all drive into lakes and then blame the world or blame ourselves. And in reality, you just aren't thinking accurately. And this is the engineer in me that just needs truth. My 3 core values are legacy, candor, and rationality. You just think inaccurately. I know people that think they're super humble that are wildly arrogant. I know people that think they're self-aware that aren't at all. I know some people that are super self-aware that think they're not at all. It's this weird paradoxical thing. And so you basically have to, from when you're a young kid, you have to learn how to learn about yourself, others, and the world. And you have to realize that you can't make good decisions unless you're accurate in your thinking about yourself, others, and the world. If you don't know how it works and why it works that way, you're going to drive off a cliff repeatedly and then basically ego up out of insecurity.
That is really interesting. And what I noticed, and I coach people in the workplace, and one of the, and even just leading people for the longest time, one of the big discrepancies we often see is that the identity and the image don't match up. Somebody thinks they're something, they think they're the top performer, but around them nobody else does. But it's and that usually is their failing, and it is self-aware.
And by the way, the top performer doesn't think they are. How
right.
cool is that?
Yeah. And they're striving. Oftentimes I feel like they're striving, and that's why they don't think they are, because they're constantly like, no, I can be better. Is that huge?
And in the process of getting somebody to be more self-aware, I would assume that sometimes when reality hits, somebody's world just crumbles because it's like, oh shit. How would you build someone back up after breaking them down like that?
So that is the question. And that's leadership in a nutshell, by the way, because building people up, I think, is easy. And I tend to do that. That's my natural. I love to build people up. People who already are inflated. So I have these 3 circles. So picture a target, 3 circles. The outer circle is what you want others to believe you are. That's the fake it till you make it. Then the next layer is what you want to believe you are. And then the inner circle is what you really are. So for me, my car accident made those 3 circles the same. I had what's called an ego death. And in other words, what I want others to think about me and what I want to think about me, all gone now. Let's start from scratch. Now I can actually make good decisions based on who I really am. Some is good, some is bad, some is ugly. This is who I really am, right? But to your point, when someone is clearly delusional, I actually have what I call an unmeds score: unstable, naive, manipulative, entitled, delusional, significance-driven, arrogant, and immature. Those are the people I steer clear of. So if anyone has a high unmeds score, I won't go anywhere near them. And the reason why is because my purpose is to help people, which I can't do unless I bring truth. And when you bring truth to someone who's delusional and entitled, they attack the hell out of you. Yep. So it's called an unmeds score. UNMEDSAI. Unstable, naive, manipulative, entitled, delusional, significance driven, the people with a birthday week, right? Arrogant, and immature.
Interesting. There's probably a lot of people right now who are in jobs who are like, my boss. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
yeah, you're funny. Honestly, the thing is none of us have. So I rate them from 0 to 10. Everybody I meet, not everybody I meet. Like I didn't rate you guys, right? But I could tell in the energy we were good. And I couldn't be my true self if you guys had high on meds scores. That's the truth. Because people with low humility have high on meds scores. And I mean inward humility. Most people think I'm arrogant. Inward, like I'm the one reading the books. I'm the one who's done book club for 3.5 years for free. I'm the one who, like, my actions are humble. I have coaches and mentors and I have a therapist. Like, you don't get a therapist if you're arrogant. And so I sound arrogant. I get that. I do. I'm not actually arrogant inside.
Well, and I think that self-awareness you said before, because again, I'll admit too, like there's some of the things you say, I'm like, oh, there's some people who are definitely like, this guy's arrogant, but because there's an awareness of it, there is this difference, I think, to it. It actually makes me curious too. Myers-Briggs, have you taken the test?
I haven't done Myers.
I'm just be curious where you fall on it.
You probably already know.
Yeah, I have a feeling. That's why I'm just curious. But especially the engineering system thinking, which I can appreciate all of that stuff. But it does mean that you sometimes have to hone yourself back into the people component. But it also makes you such a mastermind, for lack of a better way to think about it, because you are, like, as you said, you're like thinking through these steps about how to actually achieve their things, which is great. Although at times there are some people who are like, no, I mean, I hate to say it this way, but no, I just wanted a hug and to tell me I'm capable of it. And it's like, no, that's not me. I'm the guy who's going to help you actually get to
actually get it.
You know? Yeah.
I actually.
Yeah. I don't mind a hug to you every now and then if we're making progress towards your thing, but there is that thing. Yeah.
That's not my job. Right.
Yeah.
The thing is I care so deeply about people's success and fulfillment. And I actually care about that more than their feelings. And that's so not okay with the wrong people. And what is coaching? If it's not to give challenging mirrors, what are we doing? Now, I have to do that delicately because it's like scuba divers, right? You go too deep too quick and then you surface too fast. It can kill you. It's called the bends or whatever. One of my ex-clients came to me and he said, you know how to go right to the core. Like the core of who someone is. And that's your gift, but it also comes with a curse because if people aren't ready for that, the scaffolding of their identity can crumble and they can attack the hell out of you.
I remember early on, when I was still pursuing screenwriting, anyway, working at Disney early in my career, and someone asked me, hey, would you review my screenplay? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm happy to. And whenever I ask anybody to review mine, I mean, tear it down, help me make it better. What can I do? But this person wanted me to just say it was great. And I wasn't rude about it, but I provided the feedback that's like, I would do this, I would do that. Stop speaking to me. And it was, for me, that first thing where I'm like, wow, okay, there are people out there who actually want to grow, and there are people who just want to...
well, there's where unlovable is born. Michael, that's where unlovable is born. Because when you give actual feedback, true feedback, and it hurts the relationship, you think you did something wrong. And now you feel like a bad person. And by the way, they make you feel like a bad person. When in reality, they're just deeply insecure. They don't believe in themselves. And by the way, they don't believe they can transform. Why would someone who doesn't believe they can transform want tough feedback? Right? So Kobe wasn't kind. He said, dude, you suck. Like, people think he's a negative person. No. He made all his players better But if you lack self-belief and you're not a professional basketball player, you're in some serious trouble with that kind of direct feedback. And so for me, I've had to learn how to emotionally experience-driven people. You have to be much more careful if they don't believe in themselves. And you have to sort of, you don't teach calculus to a 7-year-old unless they're a prodigy. That's my analogy. And so to answer your original question, it's really, you have to understand where someone's really at, not where they're pretending to be. Because if they pretend to be like you and you give them feedback that you would want, you are screwed. And by the way, everyone's mirroring and matching each other. So they're pretending to be like you.
Especially, again, I think about it in a workplace environment. You see that all the time because that's it's for almost survival purposes in there as well. Just on that identity thing real quick, like here too, is if somebody is, I feel like sometimes when people are unfulfilled, it's because who they want to be doesn't align with who they are. So it's a different take on the identity, but I'm
100%.
curious to get your take.
No, I agree with that. That's exactly what it is. It's, you can't be fulfilled if your goals are not aligned with who you really are. Your true self. True self might not believe in itself. It doesn't mean it can't. It doesn't mean you can't build it. But if you set, New Year's resolutions, right? It's, I want to go to the gym 3 hours a day for 4 days a week, and I want to sustain. You're setting yourself up for failure because you're building your goals and your processes based on a version of you that's not real, based on a fake status perception version versus, hey, I want to exercise for a half an hour tomorrow.
Right. That's what I was going to say. So maybe people should look at, sometimes I think about as the leading versus lagging indicators, or like, what are the things that they could do that they can measure that they can actually be successful around, instead of back to the billionaire goal. I mean, don't get me wrong, that can be a goal, but it's like right now, I think about Alex Hormozy right now. He's like 100 million, 200 million. He eventually, don't get me wrong, billions in his future, but he's like, okay, what's that next step you got to hit in order to be able to then believe enough in yourself to then go to the next one, instead of making it so far that you're never going to achieve it.
100%. If you have level 10 self-belief, shoot for the moon, you will land amongst the stars. But it has to be real, and it has to be unconscious and subconscious. It can't be you think you have belief. It can't be up here. If you have low self-belief, just own it. If you have level 1 self-belief deep down and you know it, and you're triggered by me, you definitely don't like me, that's fine. Set a level 1 goal and then hit it, and then set a level 2 goal and then hit it, and then set a level 3 goal. And then before you know it, over time, you're actually going to set a level 10 goal, like the cool kids, quote unquote, like Kobe. But that's why Kobe doesn't resonate with anybody. Like, people don't resonate with him because he's like, well, I never really questioned it. Someone asked him once, like, what do you like better, winning or losing? He's like, they're the same. It's like, that doesn't land for anyone. He's like, either way, I'm going to learn and get better. That isn't good advice for most people. It's hilarious, right? And that's how I feel. Like, I don't know if I'm going to do good on this episode. Like, awesome. Like, I'm going to get better, though. I said like 6 times right there. That's terrible. Do you know how many filler words I've used in this episode? Do you know how bad I've performed in this?
By the way, we had a guest a while back on, and she's an expert when it comes to helping people, their stage presence and that whole episode all the way through. I'm like, again, like, yeah, then you're really
Nice.
hypersensitive to it. Yeah.
We had an jar once where I had to put $1 in the jar.
That's a way to do it. I like it. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm curious here, if people do work with you, is a big piece of it. Obviously, you just said there, I'm sure you help, like, okay, this is what you want. Well, let's bite size, or let's take these goals down to what's realistic in front of you. But how much do you play therapist in those situations as well?
Yeah, so I publicly never say that I'm a therapist because license-wise, I'm not. I'm a coach. And the difference between a coach and therapist, again, there's a lot of differences, but a coach is aspirational. I'm going to help you achieve your goals, and I'm success first, fulfillment second. But what we do is a process called dreamlining, where we take a dream statement, which is 1 sentence, and then we break it down into, I always have to close my eyes when I do this. I don't know why.
You're dreaming.
Close my eyes for a second. Photographic memory. I got to look at the mountain.
Yeah.
We have a dreamliner that has a mountain on it with a North Star at the top.
Yeah.
And it's called dreamlining is ultimately. I'm not trying to sell my journal.
Sure.
I'm just, yeah. So I'm looking at the mountain. So the top of the mountain is a North Star. It's just one statement that represents your purpose. It represents something pie in the sky. What is your dream? So mine is to build the most positively impactful, holistic self-improvement company in history. Yours does not have to be that grand, but it's the statement that filters your actions through it, right? I wouldn't be here if it wasn't leading to that true north to some extent. That's why I don't go to the beach for funsies. Like, I'm on a mission. Okay. So there's that. Then you break it down into your annual goals. And that's 2024. So we have 126 days left. Okay. Then I break it into the quarterly goals. So Q3, there's 33 days left. And those are called milestones in my framework. And then we break it down into inch pebbles, which is your metrics and your habits. And we track them. And so your inch pebbles lead to milestones, milestones lead to goals, goals lead to dreams. And most people look at people that are on fire and ignited and they with envy. What they don't understand is that what comes with that is hard work and grit and direction and tracking habits and being consistent. Yeah, there's so much stuff underneath it that people don't want. And it's an energy. Like right now, I'm ignited, I'm in it, I'm motivated, I'm inspired, I'm getting after it. You guys know that. You can feel it. You can feel the energy. You can feel the fulfillment. You can feel the self-belief. You can feel the self-worth, hopefully. We'll see. But ultimately, you can feel I have an enviable presence right now because I'm in it and I'm on my hero's journey. And I seem confident, quote unquote. But that's all a byproduct of everything I've been doing lately toward those goals and dreams. And so when someone comes to me, they think they want to achieve, when in reality, what they want is direction. What they want is to feel good about themselves. No one feels good about themselves binging Netflix. No offense to the Netflix person in the room, okay?
That's fine.
No one on earth feels good about themselves while binge watching Netflix. Yeah. No one. Okay, I love movies. I could do a movie day, and at the end of it, I would be inspired and feel terrible about myself, regardless of how good the movies are. So I got to keep it to one. Like one solid film at a time. Anything beyond that, I feel terrible about myself. So the point is that the people we envy are the people that are in it and ignited. You mentioned Michael Jordan earlier. He's not happier now than when he was playing. When he was playing, it was nothing short of a struggle bus. It looked like a struggle, but he loved it. Being in the fight, in the game, in the arena, that's what you actually want. The problem is the second you get in the arena and it's hard and it's tough and you get dust in your eyes, you start complaining about being in the arena. So for me, figure out what your arena is, figure out what your mountain is. It's all a mountain that gets higher as you climb it because we're all on this infinite game journey of finite life. And being in it is igniting, but it's also unbelievably challenging. And it's going to, I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah, people come to me and I help them reverse engineer their goals, but eventually they realize it had nothing to do with that.
Interesting. Well, how can people find you?
So I have a website called nextleveluniverse.com, spelled just like it sounds. I talked to you guys about why it's not Next Level University. The podcast is Next Level University, where you learn how to level up your life, holistic self-improvement in your pocket from anywhere on the planet, completely free, 1% improvement per day. Every day for a year leads to 37 times better at the end of the year, and then 37 times better than that the year later. So your whole world can change if you improve the right things and stay consistent, even though that's the hardest thing ever. That's pretty much it. Yeah. And you can Google my name. If you Google my name, I'll definitely pop up.
Any social media they should follow you on?
We use Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. I just started using TikTok, but it's just podcast clips, so you can find me on there probably too.
Sounds good. We'll link to as many of these that we can below.
Yeah,
so
thank you.
Find and the difference between universe and university. But thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Keep it up, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.